When there is emotion, it means that we feel alive. We are moved. However, we can be moved in many different ways. Emotions, inner forces that are activated, can make us be in a state of anger, sadness. We might feel ashamed, guilty. We might be afraid, and so on and so forth. Or substances or situations. And alcohol is one of the most frequent objects and hook for these states of being or emotions, affects, if you like. Whether it's a need to mirror alcohol in its intensity, in the power of spiritedness, in the power of the extent that they make us feel alive, however the suffering might be at the same time, whether it is the need to relieve ourselves from being constantly exposed to these feelings and state of being, to forget them, to put a brake on them, and so on and so forth. Hello, and welcome to the Unconscious Moderation YouTube channel. Today, we will talk about the core motivational forces in our psyche and their relationship to alcohol. Anger, sadness, shame, guilt, fear, talent, and alcohol. So we are alive thanks to our emotions. E movere, we are moved. In one of the last interviews that Einstein gave, he said, I am certain in only one thing, and that is that there is motion. So when the things are not in motion, they are not activated, the forces are not activated, let's say, into being. When there is emotion, it means that we feel alive. We are moved. However, we can be moved in many different ways. Emotions, inner forces that are activated, can make us be in a state of anger, sadness. We might feel ashamed, guilty. We might be afraid, and so on and so forth. With very, very strong emotions, especially the ones that are negative, that are unpleasant, that demand action from us, or impair our consciously defined goals or activities we plan to do, or the ways we want to be, we avoid them, or we act them out. They rule the way how we are, whether we act them out or try to deny their existence. They are the truest mirror of how we are, what matters to our soul, what is strongly activated in certain situations and nodal points in our maturing process, and they're the most important diagnostic indicator of what is going on. They tend to stay in a chronic, neurotic, repetitive, unresolved state of being if we don't deal with them. And they're so charged with libidinal energy, with psychic energy, with vital energy. But they're under a curse. I'm speaking about so-called negative emotions. There is a different terminology in psychoanalysis, so for the purpose of our conversation, I will just call them emotions. Jung called them the inner fire. And in different stages of development, phases of development, things will start to emerge and we will feel in moderate ways. But then after a certain while of our engagement with the developmental cycle we are in, and even if we don't consciously engage, the process will start heating. And we will feel more and more and more passionate. Also, the word patient comes from the same root because we are under fire. Even if we are depressed, there is this inner state of being. Forces are activated and we are carried by these forces which take enormous energy away from us, our conscious existence, if we are not engaged with them. And as these emotional states intensify, there is more calling and readiness and ripeness of the timing in our developmental cycle, diagnostically indicated that now it's the time that we engage with them. These forces will be projected one way or another, either on people or substances or situations, and alcohol is one of the most frequent objects and hook for these states of being or emotions, affects, if you like. Whether it's a need to mirror alcohol in its intensity, in the power of spiritedness, in the power of the extent that they make us feel alive, however the suffering might be at the same time, whether it is the need to relieve ourselves from being constantly exposed to these feelings and state of being, to forget them, to put a brake on them, and so on and so forth, whether it's allowance to act them out, because when we are under control, that illusion that we are under control from Monday to Friday, and then we have no capacity to not live our emotional life and the underlying conditions. Well, we are drunk. Never mind, I behaved in XYZ ways. I acted out, and conveniently, I don't even remember. But it had to be, in a somewhat pathological way, balance established. And our system had to have a vent. So it is just like unconscious allowance that we act out to express something that otherwise we can't, we don't want, consciously, unconsciously we avoid, and maybe we don't even know what our underlying condition is. Quite often, we simply don't feel safe. That anxiety that can manifest as raging anger, that can manifest as feeling of suffocation and burden on our chest, for example, extreme need to be dutiful and fill out our time and space with action, work, so that we don't have an empty moment or pause to face and experience how we actually feel, and so on and so forth. All those purposes of avoidance alcohol could serve. And what is most interesting, that behind these forces, which could be understood through many, many fairy tales and ancient myths, which are repeated in all continents, in all times, in all cultures, and are identical in their symbolism and plots in the world, their collective narratives, is that they would be that monster in the underground or underworld, so the unconscious self, the monster that protects the ultimate treasure. And that treasure would be our unique talent, our unique gifts, our unique resourcefulness, uniqueness, real identity that comes only once in the human existence, and that is us. And that in the big picture, the tendency, the goal of maturing process is that in each developmental cycle, as evidenced in psychoanalysis, is lived more, and the self-realization is the most general goal of that maturing process, of that self that emerges in each developmental cycle of our lives, brings with itself potential for releasing the most vital energy if these states of being are engaged with and transformed into equally potent and vital energy, which then becomes our guide, our companion, our empowerment, the wind in our wings. And then we actually learn what we are made of and what our original gifts are. And that can then decide and help us make decisions about our next job, about our social choices, love choices, our roles in life that we want to play and that are organic to our true identity. So this is why our emotional states are the truest mirror of the situations we are in, whether it's internal or external. And it's of crucial importance if we want to have moderation and better balance in our lives, to connect to that inner fire, which might be burning us at the moment, but it will be the true passion of life.